I stopped at a gas station that didn't exist. The lights were on, the store was open, and the yard looked ready to receive trucks. But the pumps weren't working. And by the time I understood why, my truck was already stuck on the frozen shoulder, with 3 men approaching my door in the middle of a road with no cell phone signal in Montana. I'm self-employed. I don't have a company to cover for me. I don't have a call center to contact. I don't have anyone to send another truck if I break down. If I'm late, I lose. If I lose, I go under. And that week, I was already at rock bottom, my head spinning with debt and deadlines. Pending repairs, diesel on my credit card, tolls piling up, and a freight advance that I accepted because it seemed like the only way to stay afloat. Pressure turns into haste, and haste, on the road, turns into mistakes. The cargo was clean. Automotive parts in a closed trailer, palletized with invoices, everything in order. But clean also means easy to resell. I left Billings in the late afternoon with a simple route and an even simpler objective: to arrive on time. I had planned to stop at a large gas station, one of those with a truck area and a camera overhead. But I trusted my fuel gauge, which had been misleading me. Back then I wasn't just in a tight spot. I was dealing with the kind of debt that changes your risk assessment. I'd received overly short messages from a guy I owed money to, things like, "Don't disappear," and "You know the deal." I didn't reply because replying would be admitting weakness, but I also couldn't afford to make a mistake. If I went back to the highway to look for another gas station, I'd burn diesel, miss the delivery window, and run out of gas. And if I pulled over to the side of the road to wait for dawn, I'd be admitting I'd lost control of my own work. Montana at night is empty. The traffic disappears, the radio starts to malfunction, and the wind pounds against the truck as if testing to see what will give way. When the cell phone lost service, I wasn't even worried. What I didn't expect was the license plate. Fuel 24H in simple letters, pointing to a secondary road. The place name was common, the kind that seems to exist throughout the state. I felt I recognized it. That was enough. I turned. The access road was narrow and darker than the highway. The asphalt looked good, but the shoulder had compacted snow. I told myself it would be quick. 5 minutes, fill up with gas, come back. That's all. When the gas station appeared, I felt a moment of relief. High, white lights, a large yard, a shop with a glass front. Too normal in the middle of nowhere. Except there wasn't a single car. No pickup trucks, no other trucks. Nothing. And a 24-hour gas station with no traffic is an invitation for trouble. I stopped anyway. I leaned against the pumps and got off. The cold hit my face like a warning. I went straight to the pump. Screen lit up, but no response. I swiped my card. Nothing. I tried another. Nothing. I hit it with my hand, as if that would solve anything. Ridiculous. The store door was ajar. I stood there looking, searching for a comfortable explanation. Employee in the bathroom. System problem. I was tired enough to choose comfort over caution. I went in. The smell was the first thing that struck me. Stale coffee, cleaning products, and a faint metallic odor that I didn't immediately identify. The shelves were sparsely stocked, as if someone had kept the bare minimum to make it seem open. The refrigerator was making noise. A radio crackled behind the counter. Everything was working, but there was a lack of staff. I called. Once. Then again. Nothing. Behind the counter was a door with a sign that read, "Employees Only." The doorknob was bent, as if it had been hit. On the floor, near the baseboard, I saw long scratches, drag marks. The back of my neck tingled. I felt I was in a place that was too organized to be abandoned and too quiet to be normal. I turned to leave, and at that moment, I heard a faint sound behind me. The contact of rubber on the floor, short, like a restrained step. "I'll be right back." There was no one there, but the shop door, which I had left open, was now more closed. And the wind outside was coming from the opposite direction. It didn't make sense. I left. Outside, the courtyard light gave me a false sense of relief. I walked briskly to the cabin, trying not to appear rushed. That's when I saw the first man. He was on the edge of the light, near the edge of the parking lot. Dark coat, hood up, hands in his pockets. He wasn't coming towards me. He was just standing there. When I looked, he raised his hand in a short, almost friendly gesture, but it was the posture of someone measuring distance. I went into the cabin and locked the door. Then I heard metal in the trailer, a dry, repetitive, controlled beat. When I heard the metal music in the trailer, I didn't think about internet cargo theft. I thought about people who do this as a profession. The kind who don't just start shooting, they start working. One cuts the seal, another watches, another holds the driver in place. They didn't need the whole truck. They needed minutes, and I had just given them those minutes for free. I looked in the mirror and saw a shadow stuck to the side of the trailer. Another man crouching at the edge of the light, using the lamppost as cover, and a third, further back, walking towards the front of the truck. At that moment, everything became simple. The gas station wasn't for refueling, it was bait. The dead pumps forced the driver to get out. The open store pulled you inside, and the road without traffic lights ensured you wouldn't call anyone. I turned the key. The engine started right up. I put it in gear and started to drive off. And I made the mistake they were expecting. I opened the door too wide to avoid scraping the trailer against a pole. The right rear wheel left the asphalt and hit the frozen shoulder. I felt a jolt. Then another. The wheel sank as if the ground had broken from the inside. When I accelerated, the tire spun, throwing up snow and gravel. The truck didn't move forward. It just dug in. In the mirror, I saw the three of them change their pace. They walked faster as if they knew that time was now working in their favor. The hooded man came to my door. He stopped a few meters away where I could see his body, but not his face. He took his hand out of his pocket. There was something in it. A tool, a bar, whatever. It was enough. My cell phone had no signal. The radio just static. I am a sissy. A long, aggressive sound that hurt my own ears. I honked again. And for a second, it worked. The two men near the trailer looked towards the driveway. The one in the hood also looked away, assessing the risk of someone appearing. I used that second to think clearly. As I was trying to pack, I saw the third man emerge from the shadows and move to the passenger side, as if he wanted to surround me from both sides. I heard something scraping on the cabin step. It wasn't a hard thud. It was a touch, a test, like someone searching for a weak point. Then a short tap on the window with something rigid. He didn't want to break it there. He wanted to force me to open it. He wanted to make me make a mistake out of fear. I kept both hands on the steering wheel and my eyes on the mirrors. If I opened the door reflexively, I'd lose. If I hesitated, I'd lose. In that instant, I understood that the trap wasn't the gas station. The trap was my own mind trying to negotiate a safe way out with people who don't negotiate. Accelerating would only bury me. I needed traction. I engaged the differential lock and aligned the steering wheel for takeoff. I started to build momentum. Release, accelerate lightly, let it pull, brake, repeat. First attempt, it slipped. Second, he skated less. Third, the truck went up a finger's width, as if it had hit a rock. The hooded man noticed and moved forward. He got close enough to touch the door, testing if it was locked. He knocked once, lightly, as if it were just conversation. I didn't answer. I sped off again. The truck shuddered. The trailer rocked. I felt the wheel pop out of the hole with a dry crack and the truck bounced back onto the asphalt. For a second, I almost lost control and threw the steering wheel against my chest to correct. I ripped it off. I passed the hooded man with the side of the cab just a few meters from him. I saw his body recoil. In the mirror, I saw the crouching man jump behind the trailer, and I saw the third man run a few steps towards me, as if trying to climb onto the trailer. He couldn't. I didn't stop. I just kept going. The driveway seemed longer on the way back. The gas station light looked small in the rearview mirror, but I kept my eyes glued to the mirrors, hoping to see headlights following me. Nothing came, and that scared me even more because it meant they weren't depending on me. They were depending on the next person. When I got back to the main highway and saw the headlights of a car coming in the opposite direction, I felt angry. Ordinary people crossing at night without knowing what lies just a few kilometers from the road. Once on the highway, I slowed down just enough to control the truck and avoid drawing attention. I still expected to see headlights behind me, a car without a front license plate, anything. Instead, for a few seconds, I saw a flash in the distance. high up on the access road, as if someone had switched their headlights on and off to mark my direction. Then it disappeared. It was a reminder that I hadn't won by being clever. I had won by escaping at the last moment. When I arrived at the large checkpoint and stopped under the cameras, I went to the trailer with a borrowed flashlight. The seal was still there, but there were tool marks near the latch as if someone had started and stopped. The side had recent fine scratches at the level where a person crouching would work. That gave me a different kind of chill, because it proved I hadn't imagined anything. I drove until I found a really big gas station, with trucks parked, a camera, and people walking around. I pulled over, turned off the car, and sat there for a few seconds, my hand on the steering wheel. Only then did I get out and tell the story. I talked about the well-lit station, the dead pumps, the door, the men, the trailer, the mud. The attendant listened to me and said, "You're not the first." And that was the worst part. I called the police using the station's phone and gave them the approximate location and a description of the place. On the other end, the questions were cold and formal, as if I had stumbled upon a pattern. Whether I had a license plate, whether I saw a weapon, whether anyone followed me. I had nothing to give beyond what my eyes caught in seconds. The next day I delivered the cargo. I received the freight. I paid part of what I owed. On the outside, it seemed like I had overcome a bad night. On the inside, I knew that the difference between me being here and becoming a statistic was a detail of a wheel and a second of momentum. Debt makes a man negotiate with his own instincts. It makes him believe in 24-hour signs in the dark. It makes him enter an empty store so as not to waste time. I learned it in the clearest way possible. In Montana, a deserted road isn't just about solitude. It's an opportunity for those who hunt tired and hurried drivers. And if you see a gas station that seems too perfect in the middle of nowhere, with too much light and too much silence, don't think someone lit it up to help. Imagine someone lit the light for you to stop. If you're enjoying these chilling stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any more terrifying tales to come. Now, get ready for another journey down dark and mysterious roads. I've been driving alone long enough to know that the desert doesn't forgive distractions. It doesn't shout. It doesn't warn. It doesn't change its mind. It just demands payment. Even so, that week I was doing everything wrong because I was in debt and in a hurry. When you're self-employed, the clock isn't just about time. It's about interest. I had a delivery contract through an app, payment in 7 days, and I had already sold part of that receivable to avoid delaying insurance and tires. Everyone in the chain takes a piece. If I went bankrupt or was late, I wouldn't just lose that trip, I'd lose the whole week. And when you're driving on the edge, a week becomes 2 months of arrears. My ELD, economically limited liability, was nearing its end, and I didn't want to stop to reset in an exposed place. I was driving with my mind doing calculations, and that makes any decision dumber than it should be. The load was simple, palletized, sealed, paperwork in order. Nothing special. That was the first reason I relaxed. The second reason was the route. I had taken a shortcut to save on diesel and tolls. One of those stretches you learn about in trucker groups, and that doesn't appear as a recommendation. The promise is always the same. It's faster and it's easy. Easy is a dangerous word. I left Yuma with the tank less full than it should have been. I knew it. I also knew the truck had a problem with the passenger side door lock, which sometimes wouldn't engage properly when I slammed it shut in a hurry. I'd been putting off repairs because I was choosing between maintenance and paying the installment. You can always postpone things a little until the day you can't anymore. It was past 1 in the morning when the road turned into a black line in the middle of a sea of land. No gas station, no farm, no electricity. The cabin was the only living place in the world. I had the radio on low, more for company than for music. The cell phone would lose signal and then come back, as if the desert were playing a trick on me. That's where I saw the first strange detail. A cone. A construction cone alone on the shoulder. Then another one further ahead, near the lane. It wasn't a construction zone. There were no signs. I took my foot off the gas instinctively. My tired brain completed the story on its own. Emergency work. Animal on the road. Accident. Further on, in the middle of my lane, there was a makeshift wooden sign propped up on 2 old sawhorses. Painted on it, with thick paint, was an arrow pointing to the shoulder of the road and 2 words: slow, detour. I should have ignored it. The asphalt was good, the road was clean, there was nothing but that handwritten sign. But I was already thinking about the money. If I wasted time and arrived late, the discount would fall on me, and I had no margin left. That was my mistake. I obeyed a sign that wasn't official. I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder, following the arrow, expecting to see some kind of roadblock ahead. The shoulder there was wide with firm gravel. The truck swayed a little and I felt the trailer settle. For a few seconds I believed I had done the right thing. Then I saw the pickup truck. She was parked sideways a little further ahead, slightly off angle as if she had stopped crooked on purpose. Hood open, no lights. The color was dark, impossible to tell what it was that night. The scene seemed staged to be seen from afar and make anyone slow down. I thought about getting back on the track immediately, but I was already on the gravel, slowed down, and the lane behind me seemed too far to merge back in without gaining speed. And at that same instant I noticed a glint on the ground, a trickle of something reflecting my headlights. It didn't look like oil, it looked like water. Water in the desert is always a lie or a problem. I stopped. Not completely. I left the truck in gear, foot on the brake, engine running. I looked around. Nothing. The wind pushed fine sand against the side of the cab, a dry, irritating sound. The pickup remained silent. Then a man appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the side of the pickup truck as if he had been crouching. He raised his hands in a calm, undramatic gesture. He walked slowly towards me but stopped at a safe distance. I didn't see a weapon. I didn't see a flashlight. I only saw his posture. He didn't seem like someone who was panicking. He seemed like someone who was working. He gestured forward, as if asking me to move closer, to get out. I shook my head, no, and pointed to my cell phone, trying to show that I would call for help. I wasn't even sure if I had a signal, but that's what I needed to communicate. He smiled. And that smile, in the dark, was the first thing that sent chills down my spine. Because a smile and a cry for help doesn't appear so quickly, automatically. It's a different expression. That was satisfaction. I should have accelerated right there and gotten back on the track. But the gravel had made the truck sit more than I expected. When I released the brake and tried to gain momentum, the wheels spun. Not much, just enough to make me lose that second that decides everything. On the left side, near my tank, I saw another shadow approaching, and then another further back in the direction of the truck. They weren't running. They were circling. I instinctively locked the doors and rolled the window all the way up. I heard the first impact on the metal, not a strong one, more like a test. They touched the cabin as if checking if I would react. I gripped the steering wheel, felt the sweat on my palms, and tried to control my breathing. The voice came muffled from outside, and I couldn't understand the words, only the tone. It wasn't a hysterical threat. It was an instruction. One of them banged something hard against the doorframe. The sound was metallic, precise. They were aiming at specific points, not hitting out of anger. That told me more than any scream. They had done this before. I accelerated again. The truck moved a meter, maybe 2, and skidded. I was stuck in that gravel like glue. The weight of the trailer was working against me. A light appeared behind me, low and fast approaching. It wasn't the high beam of a regular car. It was a wider, brighter light, coming from a heavy vehicle. I saw in the mirror another pickup truck or a large SUV coming down the road and slowing down in my direction, as if it too were obeying the sign. But that driver wasn't lost. He was arriving on time. I understood that the trap wasn't just for me. It was a funnel. Anyone who swerved would end up in the same gravel pit and become slow and vulnerable. The man in front pointed to my trailer. Another went to the side of the trailer, right where the seal was. I saw his hand go up, move it, test it. He wasn't improvising. He had the tools. That's when it all clicked in my head. They didn't need to take me out of the cab. They just needed to open the truck quickly, take whatever was easy, and disappear. And I, a self-employed driver, would be left with the loss and the detour story that nobody would believe. I reversed slowly, using the little space I had, trying to get unstuck from the gravel. The truck responded with difficulty, but it responded. One of them hit the glass. I heard the faint crack of something splintering. It didn't break, but it served as a warning. I turned the steering wheel and tried to steer the front of the truck back onto the asphalt. The wheels found a firmer spot, and for a moment I felt traction. I accelerated. The truck moved forward and the whole cab shook. The trailer pulled heavily, as if it didn't want to move. In the mirror, I saw the vehicle behind me stop on the shoulder as well. I saw 2 doors open. I saw more people get out. It was growing. I managed to get the truck back into the lane, but I pulled out crooked, taking up part of the road. There was no one coming in the opposite direction, and I straightened the vehicle with my heart pounding in my throat. I stepped on the gas and didn't let up. The cabin started vibrating intensely, and all I could think about was gaining distance before someone decided to pull alongside and throw me out. For almost 15 minutes, I saw nothing but the road. No lights behind me. No evidence that it had happened. And that was the hardest part. Because when there's no proof, you start to doubt your own memory. When I finally saw a small gas station with 2 old pumps and a flashing sign, I almost cried with relief. I pulled up close to the light and went inside, trying to speak without stuttering. The attendant looked at me as if he'd seen that kind of face before, as if the story were commonplace. The police arrived, looked at the scratch on the door, noted the makeshift license plate, and listened to what I had to say. Then they went to the stretch of road and came back with nothing. No cones, no signs, no pickup trucks, nothing. As if the desert had erased everything. The next day, when I arrived at my destination and they opened the truck, the seal seemed intact. The cargo, too. I felt a relief that was short-lived, because I noticed a tiny mark on the seal, about 1 millimeter, as if someone had twisted and reattached it with a tool. It was the kind of detail that almost no one sees, but those who make a living from this industry recognize it. I understood that their intention wasn't just to rob us there. It was to measure things out. If I froze in fear, if I turned off the engine, if I got out to help, I wouldn't be telling anything. I tried to sleep that night in an enclosed courtyard, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept remembering the first man's smile, his calm demeanor, his professional manner. No one shouted, no one improvised. It was all work. 2 days later, when I got back on the road, the passenger side lock was closed. Perfectly. Better than it had ever been. As if someone had adjusted it from the outside, carefully, and left it just right. I stared at it for too long. It didn't make sense. I hadn't touched that lock, and now it seemed fixed. At that moment, I couldn't decide what was worse. Imagining that I was becoming paranoid, or accepting the obvious possibility that at some point someone took the time to approach my truck with the care of someone who is not in a hurry. I didn't stop on that route anymore. I pay tolls, I use diesel, I take detours, I delay deliveries if necessary. I prefer arguing with a client to being stuck in a gravel pit obeying a wooden sign. And every time I see a lone traffic cone on the side of the road, I don't think about construction. I think about people working. Because I learned the hard way that in the desert, danger doesn't appear as danger. It appears as instruction. And the worst part is realizing that, while you believe you're making a decision, someone is just watching to see if you obey. I used to say that the Arizona desert was honest. If you make a mistake, nobody comes to save you. Last July, I stopped saying that. I'm still driving alone, self-employed, in debt. But I've learned the difference between nobody shows up and someone wants it to look like nobody showed up. My name is Mason Carter. I have an old Peterbilt truck, overdue bills, and a loan that doesn't forgive a single missed delivery. That night I was hauling pallets of auto parts from Phoenix to Tucson, unloading in the early morning. If I got there early, I could schedule a return trip and breathe another week. This kind of situation makes you ignore the obvious. First decision mistake. I ignored my tiredness. I slept poorly in a noisy courtyard and convinced myself that I was functional. Second mistake, I accepted a detour suggested by the GPS to avoid roadwork and save time. A smaller highway, faded lane markings, almost no cars. The asphalt seemed to swallow the light. Almost an hour later, I saw something that didn't match anything. A white pickup truck was on the shoulder, headlights off, driver's door open. A reflective triangle was placed too close to the lane, as if it had been put there to force someone to slow down. I lifted my foot off the gas. My instinct said, keep going. But the stubborn part of me that still believes in helping prevailed. Third decision mistake. I stopped. It wasn't a complete stop. I pulled over to the shoulder, left the truck in gear, high beams on, engine running. I got out with a flashlight and my hand in my pocket on an old pocket knife that never made a difference in anyone's life. Hey, is everything all right? Silence. I shone the light into the pickup truck's cabin. Empty seat. Glove compartment open with torn papers. On the passenger seat, a cell phone with the screen on. A call in progress. The counter ticking silently. It smelled like a trap. Crooked triangle, open door, forgotten cell phone. An invitation. I took a step back. That's when I heard a voice low and weak coming from the bushes. Mr. Please. I turned the flashlight around and saw only a crouching outline behind a bush. I couldn't make out a face. Just a shadow and a glow that could have been an eye, or it could have been nothing. Are you hurt? I'll call for help. The voice grew firmer, closer, and said something that chilled me to the bone. Turn the lights off. At that same instant, a second silhouette moved behind the pickup truck. Tall. Standing still, as if it had been waiting for me to get out. My body decided for me. I ran to the truck, climbed in, locked everything and put it in gear. Through the windshield I saw 2, maybe 3 men emerge from the darkness. One ran to the front of my truck, signaling for me to stop. Another came to the side near the tank. The third stayed further back, and in his hand there was a short metallic glint, the kind you don't want to confirm. I stepped on the gas. The truck sped off, kicking up dust. The man in front jumped to the side at the last second. I felt a sharp impact on the side, like something hitting the metal. I didn't stop. I didn't look too much in the rearview mirror. I just kept going. 10 minutes later, with no headlights behind us, I almost believed it was over. Before that night, I thought risk meant getting a flat tire or getting stuck on a weighbridge. I didn't think about people setting up roadside scenes. I didn't think about how a triangle in the wrong place changes the speed of a 40-ton truck. They don't need to knock you down. They just need to make you slow down, get you out of the seat, put both your feet on the ground, away from the steering wheel. From then on, the truck becomes just a big object and you become just a small person. Then the fuel light on the dashboard flashed. The gauge had dropped more than it should have. I heard a high-pitched hiss, air escaping from the driver's side. I didn't pull over to the side of the road. I looked for light, any light. An old sign appeared. Rest area 2 miles. The rest area was small, 3 large parking spaces, a concrete bathroom, yellow lighting that cast shadows. I pulled the truck towards the exit and left the engine running. Miraculously, a bar of signal appeared on my cell phone. I called 911. The call dropped twice. On the third time, I got through to an operator and unloaded everything. Bait truck, men in the dark, an attempt to stop me. When I hung up, I only went down as far as I needed to check the tank. I knew I shouldn't, but I needed to understand the whistling sound. The flashlight revealed the truth. A thin, transparent hose attached to an improvised fitting on the fuel tank nozzle. A siphon. Someone had started siphoning my diesel, and not just to steal it. It was to leave me stranded somewhere with no signal, no movement, no way out. I ripped off the hose and went back to the cabin, my heart pounding in my throat. I stared in the mirror, waiting for the headlights to appear. No car came. A man came on foot. He appeared near the bathroom, walking slowly like someone who just arrived. Baseball cap, light-colored t-shirt, a water bottle in his hand. He seemed too ordinary to be ordinary. He stopped at the edge of the light, half illuminated, half swallowed by the darkness, and looked directly at my truck without blinking. Then he pointed to my tank, calmly, as if giving a warning. I know. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't get out. I just honked long and aggressively once, twice, 3 times. The man wasn't scared. He smiled slightly and retreated into the darkness, as if he were sure I wouldn't get out. That's when I understood. It wasn't improvisation. It was a method. They tested who stopped, who got off, who hesitated. And if you escaped the first stage, they tried to break you in the second. I wasn't alone on the road. I was accompanied by invisible things, overdue bills, accruing interest, the memory of the mechanic saying I needed to replace a part I'd been putting off. My truck had vices I knew by heart, and I had a crumpled notebook in my bag with accounts and routes, as if writing things down could hold the world together. I was driving without music because the radio signal kept cutting in and out. When the sound disappeared, all that was left was the diesel and the wind through the window. That's when your mind starts creating images. I remembered trucker stories about cars with open doors and flashing lights in the middle of nowhere. I'd always laughed. But in that stretch, I stopped laughing. The pickup truck didn't look like a makeshift job. It looked like something someone who knows driving would have done. When I got out, I noticed another detail. A recent tire mark across the shoulder, as if a car had pulled over and driven away quickly. Small signs of assembly, of testing. When the voice asked me to turn off the lights, I understood why. If I turned them off, I would lose the only control I had. Whoever asks you to turn off the lights doesn't want to be seen. The image I still have today is of the man in front of the truck. It wasn't his face. It was his gesture, palm down, telling me to slow down, as if he were an authority figure. They rely on reflexes. When I felt the impact on the side, I thought they had shot at me. All I know is that the truck pulled a little and I had to correct with the steering wheel, and my hands were sweating too much. On the way to the rest area, I passed a point where the asphalt was blank for a few meters, and there I was certain that if I stopped, I wouldn't be found quickly. The desert doesn't need a villain. It only needs time. When I called 911, I tried to give coordinates, but I wasn't sure. I gave the highway and the approximate exit, and the operator asked for landmarks that I didn't remember. At night, in the middle of nowhere, everything becomes more or less. While I waited, I closed everything except the tiniest crack to listen. I could hear my own blood. The man who showed up on foot wasn't there to ask for water. He was there to see if I was going to leave, to gauge how desperate I was. A truck driver alone with diesel dripping on the ground, knowing the gauge is dropping, makes a mistake. They wait for the next mistake. When the police car arrived, the officers didn't seem surprised. That was the worst part. I wasn't an isolated case. I was just one more. They examined the tank, the stained ground, and the mark on the metal near the lid. They tried to open it, the policewoman said. Then they swept the surrounding area with a flashlight. Nothing. The desert swallows evidence. I asked if I should go back to get the pickup truck and help whoever was there. The policewoman looked at me and said, "If someone really needed help, they wouldn't ask you to turn off the lights." At the larger gas station, I filled up trembling. The pump spinning, the number going up, and I was thinking about how much money had just gone into the tank. I stood among other trucks, listening to conversations, and felt detached, as if I had returned from a place they hadn't yet seen. I finished that delivery, but drove the rest of the way stiffly, checking the mirrors and locks. I got little sleep. In the following days, I kept thinking about one thing. I stopped because I wanted to be the good person, but I also stopped because I was tired and in a hurry. Being in a hurry makes us forget that the road doesn't care about our story. Today, when someone asks me why I don't take shortcuts in Arizona anymore, I say it's because of the bad asphalt. It's an answer that doesn't elicit any questions. The truth is this. There are people who understand the value of a full tank of gas and the kind of decisions a debt-ridden driver makes when they think they're saving time. People like that don't need big guns. You just need to stop. When I finally laid my head on the pillow, the sound of my own horn was still in my ear. I knew that if I had hesitated for another second, I wouldn't be telling this story.